Hey everybody, I am Stacy. I'm the owner and artist of New Creations by Stacy. I'm an elite Dixie Belle retailer here in Ardmore, Alabama at the Rustic Willow. And then I still have my location in Madison as well. I'm just going to check and make sure that I'm on live here. Sometimes I have some issues. I wasn't able to tag myself either when I was posting this, but I do have a link posted to where you can like and follow me on Facebook. I also have my affiliate link so you can find your local retailer there, or you can also order online. So I see some people coming on. Hey, you guys. So if you're watching, just say hey, where you're watching from. And I guess I'm going to be looking at the comments from here because I'm not pulling it up yet. Give me just another second. Here we go. All right, so if you have any questions, if I should happen to miss them or anything like that, I will go back after the live and answer any questions. But today we're going to be working on these nesting tables. So a couple weeks ago, I actually did the first coat of this one live, which was Silk and Wharf, Bay Breeze, and then Saltwater. So that's what we painted. I've already finished this one most of the way. We're going to do some waxing on it. But I already did the first coat on this one, so I'm just going to go back really quick, show you what the second coat looks like with some salt water and a dry brush. We're going to do some Voodoo Gel Stain on top of this piece, so it'll look like this one. And then we're going to go in and do some Best Dang Wax as well on here. So let's go ahead and get started. And like I said, we're going to be using Silk and Saltwater. So it's just a nice white. And we're not going to do too much of this. It's a really easy process here. And pretty quick too. So we'll work on it for about 15 minutes and then we'll start doing the staining. So on this piece, like I said, I've got a couple different colors that I blended a little bit with Silk, which is no water for this blending. I'm going to pop you down just a little bit so you can get a little better view of this. There we go. That way you can see the whole piece. And we're just going to go ahead and get started. So what I'm doing is I don't want a whole lot of paint on my brush. I'm using a Dixie Belle Premium Chip brush here. And I'm going to wipe a little bit off. You see I'm going to dab it off so it kind of takes a little bit more. And I'm just going to go through and I'm going to start streaking paint on kind of a dry brush. I'm not pressing down with a lot of pressure on my brush, just kind of feathering over. Because I want this rustic look without having to do any distressing or anything like that. So here, let me bring you guys over a little bit more. And I'm just going in multiple directions. As I put paint on my brush, I am wiping some off. I do want to kind of stay out of the low areas here because I want those to be very pronounced. I want those low lights to remain in there. So it just kind of looks more rustic. Kind of like this one over here, if you can see it. And you can see on this side, I've done the waxing, and that's what we're going to go do over here to kind of enhance it a little bit. And again, I'm kind of dabbing my brush too if I want to get a little bit more paint in certain areas, but this is very, very random. It's just going to give it kind of that aged, chippy look that I'm going for. Not a full coverage. And let me go ahead and spin this a little bit. You guys can still see here. Hey, Belinda. All right, so we're just, again, dry brushing this on to get that nice aged look. So you can do this with the chalk mineral paint as well. The nice thing about the Silk is that it has a built-in stain blocking primer, not a bonding primer, but a built-in stain blocking primer, so that will prevent some of the tannins from the wood showing through, or if you have like a felt marker that was on here, it'll prevent that from bleeding through. So that's one positive about silk. The other thing is it has a built-in top coat, so you don't necessarily have to protect it. And that's really nice, especially when you're going to do some waxing on it, some decorative waxing, because you you don't necessarily have to protect in between applying the paint and that decorative wax or glaze or whatever you're doing there. And again, just very random. And I'm going over this in several different ways. Some of what I'm doing is just a light feather. I'm trying to hit those high areas. Like right now, I'm putting a little more pressure on my brush because most of the paint is off. So I'm just trying to let that grain pick up the leftover paint residue on here. So that's all we're doing. We're going to do this. Actually, I might get this whole thing painted before we start. See, this process doesn't take long at all. But we might get the whole thing done before we start on the top. See, I just want to kind of leave some of these areas more dark because that's where you would have your natural shadowing. And it's not necessarily shadowing I'm going for. I'm going for more of an aged look where that top layer is kind of worn down a little bit. And you're seeing those, I'm going to go ahead and dab over here. When I dab, it's giving it a nice kind of speckled look. It pulls the paint back. So the silk dries from the top down. So when I dab, it pulls the paint back a little bit. And in those areas, you can see that gray showing through just a little bit more. It's just helping with that nice aged look. We're just going to pull around over here. So I notice on this back leg, which actually you can't see, but I've just got to put some paint back here. I didn't really get that too well with the gray. And I really kind of put a little bit of too much of this salt water on, but it'll blend in fine. It's the back leg. You won't really see it too much because this table is going to be the smaller table over to my left here. And everything looks backwards on camera, but that one will be nesting inside of here. And like I said, on that one, if you want to go back and see, you can click the link to my page. I did paint it live. If you want to see how that first coat goes on. We also attached the wood you bend on this piece. You'll see this in a minute because we're going to put the Best-Dang wax on there. But we did do all of that live, plus the blending. So as this dries, you will be able to see through a little bit more to the gray. And you'll be able to tell that once we work on the smaller table that's done already. So let's just go a little bit further here. We're moving kind of quickly, and it won't take long at all to stain the top. So again, just dabbing my paint in. If you're just jumping on, this is salt water. Not very much paint on my brush, and then I'm kind of dabbing it off on my plate here. And we're just gonna swipe it across. I want it to be very, very messy paint job. I've got a little bit up here. Actually going to use, so I've stripped the top and then I sanded it down a little bit. I could have taped it off to prevent this from happening, but there's really no need. I'm just wiping it back with a little bit of water there to take that paint off. So again, just doing some dry brushing. Let's give it that nice old look. Another thing, you can get a nice, beautiful, smooth finish with the silk, but you definitely, if you're going for that type of finish, you definitely want to use one of the synthetic brushes. I'm using this chip brush because I want it to look kind of old and worn. I want those brush strokes. There's a lot of wood grain in this piece, and you can see it showing through in quite a few spaces here. So I'm kind of working that in. Even if I had done a nice sleek finish on here, that wood grain would still show. You can't fill in wood grain with paint. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to do a finish like this on this piece. You kind of want to paint with your piece and do what works best with it as well. Kind of when you're deciding, you know, how you're going to design it. So we've actually almost got this completely painted. I'm going to just go for a few more minutes and then we'll stain the top. So all these places that I have these brush strokes and that dabbed on texture, that's extra places for that glaze to sink into and really antique it out. So that's another positive with this. Or another reason I'm using this method here. I also want to see what all I can do with silk paint, how it works differently from the chalk paint, and kind of what different looks and techniques I can use with it as well. So there we go. And I've still got the inside to do, but that's not a big deal. We're just going to use the rest of the paint I've got going on in the tray. I just don't want to waste any. This is going on. I mean, this is a really quick way to do a piece. Doesn't take long. Very random. You just can't mess this look up. It's meant to be imperfect. And I'm almost out of paint here, just a couple more, swipes here, and then we'll move on. I did it again, got a little paint up here, but that's okay. Also, when I stain it, you can put the Voodoo Gel Stain over paint. You can actually use it like a glaze. So it wouldn't be bad if I did leave any paint up here. That glaze would go right into it. Or I mean that Voodoo Gel Stain would sink right into it, and it would just add a nice extra effect on there. And I'm just about out of paint. All I'm doing is just scrubbing the rest of the paint off here and seeing how far I can get. And I'm to a point where I'm not feathering as much. I'm kind of scrubbing it in because my brush has dried out a little bit. So that's it. So that's just how you apply that final coat to get this look right over here. As it dries, it'll start to even out a little bit more. Looks kind of blotchy now because it dries at different speeds, so to speak. So that streakiness will go out some. So now we're going to go ahead and we are going to stain the top. I'm just going to spin it around. The only thing we didn't do is this leg in that center section. So I'm going to go ahead and drop you guys down. And for the staining, I need to have this piece done pretty quickly. So I needed to go with a water-based stain so it would dry quickly. If I would have used the no pain gel stain, it would have been 3 to 5 days before I could have protected over it with a water-based protectant like one of the clear coats or gator hide. So I want a walnut look, but since I am using the Voodoo gel stain, I'm actually going to go with a mixture of Black Magic and Tobacco Road. So the water-based stains separate, and I already shook them, but you'll see like a separation line. You just want to shake these up really well. So what I did was I applied, I didn't actually mix my stain. What I did was I just put some in my plate, and the stain goes a long way. Just want to make sure I get enough on here. So I did that with the brown. Like I said, I did not mix this. And then I took the Black Magic, and I just poured right over the top of it. Probably not an equal amount, but you can just see kind of how I did that. Maybe a little bit more in there. I'm not very precise. I don't measure. I would say that's a little less black than there is of the Tobacco Road, but it's not precise. I do need kind of an aged look on the top of these as well. So it's another reason I'm doing this way. I don't want them to be exactly perfect. So you've got, let me get you in so you're kind of looking down at the top of this. So all I'm going to do, this is the Gator Hide Applicator Sponge. So I'm just going to take this sponge and I'm going to use it to kind of mix this around a little bit. But mainly, I just want this on here. That's a little bit much though, so I'm going to wipe some off. So you can kind of see how it's looking on my sponge. And then I'm going to go with the grain of the wood. This is a water-based stain, so you don't have a super long work time with it, not like with the oil-based stains. But I'm going to go with the grain of the wood. And I'm going to have long, nice, even strokes. So with the water-based stain, it does sink into the wood a little bit, as opposed to like the no pain gel stain that sits on top. And what you want to do with this water-based stain, so if you leave a blotch of it, it's going to dry in a blotch, and that will be a blotchy looking spot. So I'm just making sure that everything is nice and evened out. My edges are crisp and clear. Let me go ahead and put some on the front here. Now I do like to have a little excess in the crack. I like this little crease to be darker, but if I don't get that accomplished with the stain, then I will go back over that. You can do a wax over it. It's water-based. It's going to dry, usually within an hour or two, I'm ready to protect it. But really, I mean, if it's a class or something like that, I've done it as quickly as, I've really done it as quickly as like 20 minutes, but that's really faster than you should do it. I would say 1 to 2 hours before you, do a protectant on it. I've done a second coat within 15 or 20 minutes for a live. Really just kind of depends on where you're at. Is it hot outside? But it dries very quickly. So I'm just going to put some more on my spongy, and we're going to keep on going. Just nice, long, even strokes. I've got it on wheels, so it's wanting to roll when I'm pulling back here. And I'm overlapping a little bit. Just want to be careful when you do this that it doesn't pull it back because it is in the process of drying. But I just want to make sure that there's no uneven, really dark or splotchy areas. And you want to make sure that you're going straight with the wood. So one of the reasons I always stand on the side of the grain is because if you're staining something in front of you, it's really easy to go into an arc because your body just goes that way naturally. So I generally, to prevent that from happening, and you don't really notice it until you're done staining, I do try to stand off to the end, one of the ends of the grain. And what I'm doing here is just smoothing that out where I've got a few little smudges. But you can apply this, this Voodoo Gel Stain, you can apply it with a brush. I actually apply it all different ways. It just kind of depends on what I'm doing and what look I'm going for. Usually it goes on a little bit thicker with a brush. Also, if you have a really grainy piece of wood and you're using a brush, a lot of times you're able to get into the grain a little bit better, especially if you have something that has a few pock marks that you didn't fill or something like that. They always end up a little bit darker, so you can kind of work them in. So you just want to be aware and pick the best application for your piece and the look that you want. I'm just making sure that I've got all the smudges off. We're getting this back area really quickly. Right, and I usually kind of try to take a step back just to see if I've missed any areas. This over here did not take the stain quite as well. And I've got a little excess. I just want to make sure you can see this. I've got a little excess in my sponge. So I'm kind of squeezing that excess out of my sponge and trying not to wipe this off quite so much. I'm trying more to paint with the stain here in this front section. So I just want to look at it from multiple angles, make sure that I've gotten it underneath, which I do. And just from a few different angles, make sure I don't have any big smudges that are gonna dry funny, that it's nice and smooth. So like back here, I had a little chip on it. And that stain didn't get in it, so I just squeezed my sponge a little bit so that I could get that excess stain inside of there. So that's it. I actually have quite a bit. I poured way too much in. Normally I wouldn't use that much, but it was a little bigger than the other one, and I didn't want to run out while we were doing the live. So, but that's it for the stain. I'm just going to wipe my hands a little bit, and then we will get right into the waxing. So we're just going to let this dry. Again, it's a water-based stain, so it's going to dry really, really quickly. And we'll come back to it once it's dry, so you can kind of see how that looks once it's dried up. I'll probably end up going back with the second coat, maybe even before the live ends, just on this front section, because it didn't take the stain as well here. It's still a little bit lighter. So let me go ahead and move that over. And let me roll this. So you can see with this piece, this is kind of how it turns out. So with the water-based stain, it doesn't quite seem as deep and dark and rich as, like, say, the No Pain Gel Stain and oil-based stain. Excuse me, I kind of had the hiccups there for a minute, but as well as the oil-based stain. But once you, even though it seems like it has a more dull finish, once you add a protectant over it, so this is satin, it gives it a little bit of a sheen. It kind of gives it that deeper, richer look. And like I said, I was going for walnut, so I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. And that was Black Magic and Tobacco Road, if you're just jumping on. So I've got that on. So on this particular piece, I do have this leg done as well as the back legs and these bottom sides. And I figured we could go and just do this section here with the, because this is going to be the final look, with the black besting wax and the brown besting wax. And I'm going to apply it in a couple of different ways. So we've got the black here. Mine's pretty well used. And then we've got the brown. And I'm just randomly kind of mixing these in. This is kind of bringing out the smoky with the gray underneath. And it's giving it a little bit of a brown to tie in the top as well. So for the, I specifically left the Would You Bend. So we're going to go ahead and do it first with the wax. And I'm going to start off with the black wax. I just dunked a little bit in, but I'm going to take my lid, and you can use a paper plate or whatever, and I'm going to kind of smooth that around a little bit on my brush, wipe a little bit back so you can kind of see what it looks like. And then I'm just going to start working it in. I want it in all the details. I don't want it all over, but on these Would You Bend pieces, I want it very much in the details. I want these to really pop and stand out. So I just did that with the black, and then I think what I'm going to do is come in. Oh, I don't have my brush. Oh, here they go. So I'm going to come in, I think, with a besting wax, or excuse me, sorry. This is the La Petite, and this is actually not a wax brush. It's, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the name of it now. Fringe tip. It's the Fringe tip brush by Dixie Belle, and mine's pretty well used, so it doesn't really have that tip anymore. It is a natural bristle brush. So I can use it for the wax. I'm going to do the same thing with the brown wax. Wipe a little bit off in the lid. And I'm just going to come in. I'm not scrubbing it in as much as I did the black. I just kind of want to get it in a few spots to give it that brown tint. So I've got this on. So normally you want to let your wax set up for about 15 to 20 minutes before you wipe it back. But in this case, I pretty much want to wipe everything back that I can get to. I just want this really heavy in the details. So I'm just going to start wiping around here. You can also use like a clear wax if you want to pull even more of it back. The clear wax is kind of like an eraser. And if you get too much on, I did not get out my clear wax, so I'm not too concerned about it. I want this to look aged, and not only that, this gray from the wharf here, that undertone, that's showing through. It's a little bit more. And again, this wood is so grained that wax also sinks into that wood and really brings that out. So just going to go ahead, and I've got most of the top wiped off here to just give it that nice bright on the tips of this. You can also let your wax dry, and if you want an even more, and I've done this a few times, once your wax dries, you can go in and dry brush over that, and that just gives you an extra layer, a little more depth, and a little more pop. But I'm happy with that. That's how I want it to look. So we're going to leave that one there, and then we're going to come in. So I really like to apply my wax with makeup brushes. So this is an eyeshadow brush, and it's really great to give like a really soft look to it. You can kind of, just like if you're putting on eyeshadow, you know, it's going to get that soft fade out a little bit easier with the wax. So I just dunked it just a little bit into my black wax. And I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to line this out. And I'm going to kind of work it back and forth so it gives me a nice soft blend coming out of that kind of that crevice. Just work it in a little bit like that. And then I can come back with my rag 15 to 20 minutes if you want to really let it set up. But come back with my rag and just soften it up a little bit more. When I rubbed that just then, that was a clean spot. You can see I only was softening it up just a little bit more to make that fade kind of more subtle. So now I'm going to go through, I'm going to pinstripe out all of these little spots. And I'm doing this with black and brown. I'm just kind of going back and forth, just kind of whatever strikes me at the time. So I've got a lot of wax on my little makeup brush here. I want this to be nice and dark on these pinstripes. But I also want to take it, once I get some of that off, I want to take it in here in these low areas. I didn't mean to get that much in the low area. But I want to lightly put it on in my low areas too, just to give it a little more shading. And I'm just lightly putting it in there. Just dipping a little bit more on here. I'm going to go around and do this entire leg. And then we'll come back through and wipe it back. So this is black I've got on here now. I'm just kind of running it into the brown. I want it to be nice and random. Make sure you guys can see this here. We're just wringing those out. You can see I'm not putting a whole lot on here, but it goes a long ways. So we're just adding these rings. Shading a little bit. And I found if you don't have an eyeshadow brush or you don't want to get one, you can also use a natural bristle brush. That's what I used to use, just a small artist natural bristle brush to line these out. And that works as well. I really just like the eyeshadow brush because you can really soften it up. So I'm just going to swing you around so we can get this back side. And again, I'm just randomly going back and forth between the black and the brown here with the Best Dang Wax. Just want to make sure you guys can see. Let me scoot back a little bit. Spin this around. And you can see the ones that are already done here as well. And it doesn't have to be perfect when you're lining it. If you do not want to wipe it back, if you really want to have it look like a pinstripe, you don't have to, in which case I would probably try to be a little more careful with my application here, but I want it to be kind of random. I'm going to put a little bit in here just to shade in those spots. It's kind of another low-lying spot here. And then let's go ahead and put some coming down from the top, a little bit of black there. Maybe a little bit of brown too, mix it in. I'm going to put this on kind of heavy. I just want to shade that down. Some in here. Just want to get this whole leg done. All right, so then I'm just going to come back and wipe it back a little bit to kind of ease it in here. And like I said, with the silk, you do not normally, so if this was chalk mineral paint, I would absolutely apply a coat of satin in between before I put on my wax. Just want to make sure you guys can see before I put on my wax. But with the silk, you don't have to do that because it has a built-in coat. It's not quite as porous as the chalk mineral paint, so you still have some control with wiping back. And I'm just using like a lint-free rag. You can use a t-shirt, anything like that. But we're just gonna soften up some of this. And just wipe it back. So I still have those sharp lines, and when I'm wiping back, I'm just softening that up so it looks a little more natural, like it's aged in there. Let me just go around, make sure that I've got it wiped back everywhere that I want it. Yep. So that's it. It's just given me that aged look now. So you can kind of see the difference between this one that we just put the second coat on and what a difference adding that wax in makes. I'm also going to go ahead and do the bottom here. I want to bring out this this Woodgie Bend trim that I added at the bottom. So I just put some black on here. And this is the Dixie Belle La Petite brush. And actually for this trim, you know what? I'm going to go, So another way that I apply wax, and I'm going to do this because I do not want it, that brush is too big for me to really get in the details. I'm getting too much of the wax down here. And I want to minimize that heavy look for the trim. So this is a chip brush that after it's been used a while with paint and it gets really nasty, I just cut it down so that I can use it as a wax brush and be a little more precise in certain areas. So I'm going to go ahead and just put some black on here. And same thing, I'm going to wipe it back in my lid. Kind of even it out so it's evenly applied on my brush. And then I'm going to go and just really work it into this trim. I want all of that nice and highlighted. I want it really to get into the details, because I still want that top to be highlighted. I just want to make it look really dirty, like that dirt has sat down in there and really aged it. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more into the cracks and crevices on the slide, because that's another place that, you know, over time dirt gets in there, you can't get it cleaned out. So that's just going to make it look a little bit more authentic. All right, so now I think I'm going to take my little, I want a few browns in there too, so I'm just going to take this eyeshadow brush. Just going to add it in a few spots. Nothing big. Just add a little bit of brown in, pull it all together, and that's enough. So then I'm going to go ahead and take and wipe it back again. And I'm only wiping the spots where I really want to pull the wax back, where I still want it to look a little bit dirty. I'm not really wiping that. So let's go ahead now. I'm going to really take the wax off the top of this molding so these flourishes really just stand out and this pops. So now it really, really ages it out quite a bit more. And I think I've hit everything on this one now. So now this one, now that I've added the wax, this one is completely done. Actually, one other thing that I wanted to do, when I stained this one, I did not get it really dark in here. So one thing I can do is take some black wax. I will need to let this one set up a little bit before I wipe it back. but I'm actually going to add some black wax over my water-based stain so that I can make this part look a little bit older. And you can actually use the besting wax over raw wood. It gives it, you can stain with it, so to speak. Gives it a beautiful look. Especially if you want to have it look a little bit more natural. I do like to put a wax over that sometimes. All right, so I am going to, I may wipe a little bit back right now, but I just wanted to get a little bit in there so I can have that dark. And this is another way. Let's say you missed a spot with stain. I was talking about how if you have a lot of wood grain and you're using that applicator pad to apply it, sometimes the benefit of a brush is to get it into some of that grain. So this is a trick. If you missed some, you didn't see it the first time, you can go back, you can add just a little bit of wax, or, I mean, there's actually a whole bunch of ways to fix that. But anyway, that's one of them. And we are actually out of time now. So thank you guys for hanging out. If you know anybody that could use any of those techniques or steps, please share and like the video, and follow me on Facebook as well. Thanks so much. You guys take care. Have a good day.